Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. And it is that time of the week once again where, as you can see, I'm joined by James Benge of CBS, which means one thing: it is Inside Arsenal. Extra time, James. How you doing, mate? All good?
I'm nervous, Charles. This is take
Nervous?
3. My microphone is crackling, as we've discovered, but we think it'll got to a stage where it's not going to break. But hey, if it does, I hope people enjoy their old-timey sounding podcast or YouTube video. Just imagine we're talking about the 1930s. But other than that, I'm great because I'm still on the post-Arsenal Liverpool high, and everyone else in the world is, aren't they?
Yeah. It was a very fun Sunday in North London, and I've been basking in it all week. I have to admit, I've just been down the gym, and I was listening to the Arsecast, actually, the sort of second half of the Arsecast when I was on the treadmill, just still kind of basking and enjoying listening to it, even though it was what 5 days ago now. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Talking about the Arsecast, actually, have you heard James's I called it a monologue earlier on in a week when he talks about Chris Sutton, and have you seen the poorly drawn Arsenal animation with the voiceover over the top? It is comedy gold.
The animation is sensational. I mean, the one issue I would have with that is I quite like Chris Sutton. I always get the feeling he's sort of in on the joke, isn't he? He's sort of trying to carve out this niche, and it's a hard niche to carve out. Of the grumpiest old man.
No, I'm stopping you. That's bollocks. It's not a hard niche to carve out. It is absolute engagement farming, fish reeling in type punditry, and I fell for it. I didn't bite. I didn't reply to it or anything like that. But just seeing a tweet made my blood boil. I cannot stand him. Ever since, what year was it? 97. 96, 97 at Highbury, last minute against Blackburn. Ball went out. Someone got injured. Arsenal player got injured. Can't remember who it was. Dixon, maybe. Nigel Winterburn. Actually, I think it was Nigel Winterburn. Ball went out of play. They gave the ball back to us, as they should, but Sutton chased Vieira down when he shouldn't have. They didn't give him any time on the ball. So basically, they threw the ball back, but he immediately chased Vieira down. They got a corner, took the corner, scored. And I've hated him from that moment. He ended up hiding in the toilets at Highbury that day because all the Arsenal players were outside trying to get him. Like Martin Keown was literally trying to kill him afterwards. And he went running down the tunnel and hid in the toilets before he could escape Highbury that day. And I've never been able to stand him from that moment. So no, you can't. You're not allowed to like Chris Sutton.
Well, I think we all have our own, in the great debate about people having fun, which I do want to. I want to talk about it. I haven't had an opportunity at CBS. We don't do media criticism. Everyone has their own person that winds them up about this, but for me, it's the man that tells people not to get carried away, but that kissed Paul Scholes full on the lips because he scored a last minute winner against Man City in a season that, by the way, Man United didn't win the league that year. So that is carrying away because. You see videos on the internet, where Paul Scholes' mouth has been. And yet, Gary Neville full on Frenching it. I mean, what a fun sponge. Like, I watched a bit of Monday Night Football the day after, and there's this brilliant analysis. And I know it's hard to put together at a moment's notice. But all the stuff about how well Arsenal had done to hold that Liverpool team to next to nothing attack-wise. That wasn't like... You didn't need a day to work all that out. And you just ended up with this incredibly tedious debate about whether a team that's probably not going to win the league is having too much fun. And I mean, the thing for this being Martin Odegaard taking a picture of Stuart McFarlane. What? Who cares? Like, it's a lovely moment for Stuart McFarlane, who is a really popular employee at Arsenal Football Club. Why does Gary Neville need to have a take on that?
I know, mate. It's the whole thing's just a joke. It is been, and it just really annoyed me that was the big talking point after the game. And like you said, I know it takes a while to put together big analysis pieces, and I know on Monday Night Football they covered it well. But like you said, it didn't take a lot to be able to pick out the key points in that game to be able to discuss it immediately post-match and literally spend 10, 15 minutes talking about how Arsenal celebrated a must-win game. It was such rubbish. It's such easy analysis. I called it gutter punditry afterwards, and it is. It's just such easy thing to talk about. It's the sort of thing you'd see on on TalkSport when they're like, it's a really slow news day, we've got absolutely sod all to talk about. Let's come up with an easy phone-in topic that, just a go-to topic that we know generates discussion. And it was just that kind of thing that was it was utterly, utterly pathetic. And like you said, it's proper fun sponge stuff from Neville and Carragher. And to be honest, Carragher was the worst of the two, I think, out of all of them. I guess you can probably
I can't talk about that.
Yeah, his team just ended up getting beaten, played off the park for 90 minutes. So he was obviously in a bad mood, but it's just utter rubbish. And like you said, that it's so hypocritical as well, because there's so many things you can point to. Klopp getting carried away so many times, Carragher seemingly loving that at the time, Gary Neville charging down the touchline at Euros when he was assistant coach to Roy Hodgson to celebrate Daniel Sturridge's last-minute winner against Wales. Celebrating in front of the fans and jumping in his suit. And wasn't it? It was him when Rio Ferdinand scored the last-minute winner against Man United at Stretford End. He went charging off to the Liverpool and didn't celebrate with them, didn't he? And just started celebrating in front of the Liverpool fans. There's so many instances where you can point to, and it's so hypocritical, and it's just, frankly, bollocks. As I said, it just really, really annoyed me, and how it was a talking point, I don't know. But from the game itself, I mean, it was. We haven't really spoken about it since. You were there in the press box. I was there in the stands, obviously, and as a fan, it was just a brilliant day. Fantastic atmosphere. The Emirates has been quiet at times in the last couple of months, but this was back to its raucous best of what we saw from last season. It was so loud. I, like you, got a noise notification from about decibel level and how it could, any prolonged period staying in that noise could lead to hear loss, which made me laugh. But it was that loud. The place was rocking when those goals
from minute
one
towards the end. From minute one.
Yeah, it was seriously loud, and it was fantastic, and it was just a brilliant win for Arsenal, and one that has certainly opened up the title race. And what did you think about the game itself? I don't want to spend too long talking about this because obviously it's a few days old now. We're going to quickly switch attention to West Ham and some of the big talking points ahead of that game, which is coming up. But just quickly on Liverpool, how impressed were you by Arsenal's performance and the way they approached that game and the way they stifled such a Liverpool team who came into the game in such a good run of form with so much momentum behind them?
I mean, the stifling's a great word, and wow. I thought this was as impressive defensively as what they did to City earlier in the season. Just, there were whole spells of the game, like 20-minute periods where Liverpool couldn't even get in the box. I mean, I tweeted that, and literally a minute later I look up and Darwin Núñez is like attacking after that header, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? But, bringing in the fact that the players got carried away, air quotes for people listening on podcasts there. I don't remember a big game that Arsenal have won like this in a long time. You might. A game where Arsenal shot themselves in the foot, and I remember a lot of big games where they've done that, where they shot themselves in the foot, panicked, and actually kind of in the cold light of day, the panicking is normal because you played 45 brilliant minutes. You deserve to be going 2-0 up. It's 1-1. Of course you're like, oh my God, have we just lost the title? And who knows if they're in the title race. And then they go, okay, no, we're not, this isn't going to define the game, the season, everything. Let's get back into this. And so the way they overcame those 5 minutes of nerves early in the second half was, for me, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in a Mikel Arteta team. Like, that is not, and that's not Arsenal. That is not Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, Unai Emery's Arsenal. It's not even like early Arteta Arsenal. Man, it was sensational. I loved it. I thought it was up there with the best performances I've ever seen from Mikel Arteta's Arsenal.
I mean, that's a big statement, but you sort of go back over the big wins that Arsenal have achieved under Arteta. I mean, Man City obviously was huge this season. At the start of the season, it was a very different game to what we saw against Liverpool. Interestingly, I think Liverpool had one shot on target at the weekend. I think City only had one shot on target in that game as well.
Yeah,
and that was in like the fifth minute, wasn't it? When someone cleared off the line, and that was it. So you think about it. You play 180 minutes plus against Liverpool and Man City, probably the two best attacking teams in the league, if not Europe, and you can see 2 shots on target. I think that says an awful lot about how good this Arsenal team is and how difficult they are to play against. And if they could stop shooting themselves in the foot and conceding like ridiculously Arsenal goals, they would have such a good chance of doing. I mean, they do have a good chance, but they would have such a good chance of doing something very, very special over the next couple of seasons, because they are defensively, they are so very, very difficult to play against.
Can I just go off script a bit? Have you seen the numbers going around from like Opta about each team's odds of winning the title? And City are at 80%. I think I'm working 80. Liverpool are at 13. Arsenal are at 7. I mean, there's some sort of a bit of variance in there, because I know they're given sort of Spurs a 0.1% chance of winning the title, which is generous. When I give you those numbers, or if you'd seen them before, does that feel right? Like I feel like City's numbers right, but I think it needs to skew a bit more towards Arsenal in terms of who could nick in ahead of them.
Yeah, no, I think City's numbers are definitely right. I think if you're a betting man right now, and you would definitely you had to put your mortgage on one team, it's certainly going on Manchester City, isn't it? So I think 80% chance. They know they've been there, done it. Treble winners, got everyone back, everyone's fit. I think 80% is about right. But yeah, I think Arsenal Liverpool is sort of toss of a coin type stuff, isn't it? In terms of who would be closest. I think Liverpool will score an awful lot of goals. They've got Salah to come back. They've got Szoboszlai obviously to come back. But Arsenal are very, very good as well. I think it is very close between the pair of them. I still think City are looking very, very ominous now. What is it, 9 wins in a row since they've got back?
I was at Brentford on Monday night, and
they are kind of like Arsenal. They are giving teams a little bit of a sniff, aren't they? I think they've kept one clean sheet in about 10 or 11, City. But the amount of times I've watched it, I feel like anyway that I've watched them recently, and suddenly I've seen they're behind or something like that. You're like, something could happen here. But they keep, as City do at this second half of the season, and they just find a way to win. If Haaland's not going to get you, if De Bruyne's not going to get you, then Foden is, or Bernardo Silva is. I looked at their starting lineup against Brentford, and I thought, oh god, we're back in the really scary realms of Man City starting lineups now.
And I thought Brentford played as near to a perfect game as you can play if you're them against City. Like Flecken was brilliant. They created all these chances for themselves. They had a really clear plan of getting in behind City's fullbacks, and they got everything right. And then they just still got steamrollered in the end.
That goal right on half time though was such a killer. If Brentford go in 1-0 up, I mean, it's so easy to say obviously now, but it is a very, very different game. I think in that second half, they've still got something to hang on to. But you just knew as soon as 1-1, that was it. I was sitting here thinking, that's it, game over. There is absolutely no way Man City aren't going on to win this game now. I think if it was 1-0, it would have been different. And for Brentford, it was a really rubbish goal to concede as well, having worked so hard, and then to give a goal like that away. Yeah, it sucked the life out of them, didn't it? And you always knew that City were going to come through. But I mean, we're talking about the title race. It is very, very tight. I think I saw a tweet from the Premier League saying that the last time that the top 5 had been separated by this small amount in the Premier League at this stage of the season was over 10 years ago. I think it was 20, or it might have been 10 years ago. It might have been 2013, 2014. So it is very, very tight. I mean, look, just 2 points separating the top 3 after 22 games. Obviously, Arsenal and Liverpool played 1 game more than Man City. So it is really, really tight. But I can absolutely understand why Man City are still overwhelming favourites at this stage.
Yeah, they just look like they're sort of in steamroller mood, really. And I think compared to even Liverpool, there's just this strength off the bench. But I mean, Arsenal don't go to City until April. Is it early April?
It's Easter Sunday. Yeah, it's early April.
Oh bloody hell! Well, then that's if you can just stay in it. If you can just keep pace until then, who knows?
Give yourself.
I think in a one-off game at the Etihad, it'll be really, really hard. But they've shown that they can match City in a one-off game. And if they're still in the mix, then But it needs everything.
I would certainly I would back this team to go up there if everyone stays fit and put in a hell of a better performance than what happened at the end of last season. Definitely, put it that way. I think Man City will find it an awful lot tougher to play against this team than that team they faced at the end of last season, who were clearly out on their feet and missing some key players. I mean, where
at least if it's Easter Sunday, we can all get absolutely roastingly drunk when we're depressed afterwards.
No, I think Easter Sunday, all I envisage is sitting in awful traffic on the way there,
Yeah.
on the way back, trying to get to the Etihad Stadium. Where do you kind of look at where Arsenal are now? Obviously, they had that blip over Christmas. They've come back, went away to Dubai. I think we all felt that was a good time to have the break, and they've come back 3 wins in a row. You would hope that win at the weekend really gives them a massive, massive shot in the arm. They've been slowly rebuilding confidence, I think, haven't they? We saw it. The Forest wasn't great, but they got a job done. Obviously, they hit Crystal Palace for 5, but again, it wasn't one of those performances that sprung out as a 5-0 win, wasn't it? I think everyone who watched it could see that. But then Liverpool, those two kind of felt like the building blocks of getting the confidence back and just beginning to get some momentum back. And then Liverpool, you'd hope, is going to be a real springboard into what's to come over the next few weeks. I mean, West Ham this week, it's such a massive game because obviously West Ham have beaten Arsenal twice already this season.
It's a rerun of that double header from last season, which kind of, when you look back on it, is where the title went.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought that. Yeah, it is exactly the same, isn't it? Liverpool, West Ham, and it would be the most Arsenal thing to do to go and lose that game and drop, having beaten Liverpool, to go and drop points. They cannot let that happen. They have to go and back up that win against Liverpool with an away win this weekend, and not because it would just undo all the hard work, wouldn't it, to go to West Ham and drop points. It's huge. I think Man City play first. They play Saturday lunchtime.
Everton?
Yeah. At home.
The flashbacks to April are quite strong, aren't they?
They are. This time it's at the Etihad, not at Goodison, though. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts going into this West Ham? It's so important. I mean, every game is the biggest game because it's the next game, but I genuinely feel, as big as last weekend was, this game is just absolutely huge for Arsenal's chances of staying in the title race.
I do think the table's telling a few fibs about West Ham. I don't think they're that good. They weren't very good defensively when they came to the Emirates last season. I think in terms of sort of XG difference, they're like a bottom 5 team. They pretty much sacrificed a lot of their defense. I don't know if they lost any sort of high-profile midfielders that really helped dominate that area of the pitch. I think maybe they could do with a proper anchor man. Although, like, the individual talent is there, and the worry will be that they will raise their game, that the London Stadium. I mean, I think it's lucky that Arsenal are going there at 2:00 on a Sunday. I've done a few of those games and they're pretty sleepy. Whereas, if you get that as a midweek game, the London Stadium can actually be hardly Upton Park, but it can have a bit of bounce to it. But I don't know. I mean, we'll go into the team and all that. I don't think it's a side that Arsenal should be particularly scared of, and equally, by that count, like, frittering away the points you've just earned last weekend would be unforgivable, really. If you're these Arsenal players, you've got to think of what you need to do is what City do at this time of the year. You need to go and win 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 straight. You need to win every game between now and when you go to the Etihad. And that's like stratospheric standards. And maybe it's unfair to sort of say that any team should hit them. But Arsenal want to win the title. So there you go. That's what you got to do.
Well, it's going to have to, yeah. If they're going to win the title, that's what they're going to have to do, because Man City is certainly looking like they're on one of those runs now. Just looking at the table again at where West Ham are, the 7th, aren't they? 36 points. Goal difference of 0. Man United is still on minus. Man United is still on a minus goal difference. That's mad. Yeah, it's. I mean, can you read much into the fact that West Ham have beaten Arsenal twice this season? Will that do you sort of buy into the fact that will have some sort of impact on Sunday's game mentally with both sets of players?
Been off the EFL Cup one, because that was a pretty rotated Arsenal team, wasn't it? Until he sort of en masse substituted in his best players in the 86th minute. I feel like the other game, I mean, I don't think Arsenal will take any heart from it, but David Moyes is a smart man. He'll know what he saw, and he'll know how close his team got to a fairly comprehensive defeat. Was that just before or just after Christmas? Just after, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
it was one of those games, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear that Arteta has his difficulties with David Moyes. I mean, everyone talks about Pep, but I always think the true sorcerer and apprentice relationship is David Moyes and Mikel Arteta. I mean, what was the last game that Arsenal played against West Ham where they weren't behind, or didn't ended up disappointed? I mean, you go back to Boxing Day straight
Boxing Day,
after the
wasn't it?
World Cup, they won, but they were down in the first half. Before then, when they were fighting for fourth, like they were massively put through the ringer, weren't they? Even if Rob Holding won it, so it tends to be a tough game. But like also now when you kind of think about all them, you're like, I don't really remember Arsenal coming into many of those games in a better situation than they are right now.
Yeah. Midfield's going to be really interesting. Obviously, Jorginho played against Liverpool and he played brilliantly. He was so good, and that always felt like.
Did you do player ratings for that game?
Yes.
What did you give him?
I gave him and Rice a 9.
Oh, I hate when people are too scared to give out 10s. That was a 10 out of 10.
Would you have given him a 10?
It's a 10 game for me from Jorginho. 10 with an injury, with a foot injury.
Yeah. Arteta spoke about that afterwards, didn't he? Said he's been in a lot of pain for a fair while.
It's the foot injury that kept him out of the Brighton game. So that's 2 months pretty much.
Mm-hmm. He felt it always felt like a Jorginho game, didn't it? When we spoke about it in the build-up to the match, it was always, as well as Smith Rowe played and as sort of lively as he was against Forest, you always knew that Jorginho was going to come back in for this game. It just felt, felt right. And so there was no, I wasn't disappointed when I saw that starting lineup against Liverpool. But having played so well, does he keep his place on Sunday? Yeah, you'd play the same team? You wouldn't bring Emil back in? They're going to face very different teams and very different setups, aren't they? From what Arsenal were dealing with against Liverpool, they're going to deal with completely different sort of tactics on Sunday. But you'd stick with Jorginho, would you?
I know all that, yeah, and you are right. And I'm not going to kick off if Smith Rowe starts or if Jesus is fit and Havertz starts, because I think I've kind of got to the stage with Mikel Arteta and his selecting of 11s that I think he gets it right more often than not. But I mean, we all have these games, right? I mean, I can give you like Bellerin against Bayern Munich, Ibrahimovic against England. You know, the games where you're just like, okay, I didn't get this player before. I think Jorginho is sensational, and it's not just that; it's everyone around him looks brilliant when they play with Jorginho. I don't think it's a coincidence that Rice, Ødegaard, Havertz all had excellent games. Trossard, Martinelli. I think what Jorginho did was set this tempo that was just perfect for the game. Do I think that's necessary against West Ham? Probably. Like, I know what I've just said there about they're not a great team, but it is a tough place to go away from home. And I think Jorginho would set you out on the right course. And then if things aren't going well at the hour, or if you need to sort of just add a bit more oomph off the bench, that's when you turn to Smith Rowe or you turn to Havertz or whoever. I just think Jorginho is great. And when's he not had a great game for Arsenal when he's played? I mean, it's, if you look at the big games where Arsenal needed to win and Jorginho's been in the 11, Arsenal played great and probably won. So yeah,
he's been a great signing, hasn't he? He's been a great signing. I think that I can think in the top of my head one sort of error in that game against Spurs, which is just an individual error, which happens all the time to everyone. You get robbed of possession. Sometimes you take a little bit too much time on the ball. But in terms of his overall performance, since he's been a fantastic signing. Absolutely. That's why, I'd 100% keep him. I'd trigger that option, keep him for another 12 months. Clearly still got loads to give. I don't know. I think it's a tough one, West Ham. I think it's definitely the Jorginho decision is definitely the biggest decision Arteta's facing in this game. Because I think Tomiyasu obviously comes in at left back if Zinchenko's out, which we expect he probably will be. And I think Tomiyasu against Kudus is good for Arsenal. I'd feel a lot safer seeing Tommy there than I would Zinchenko there, given how bright Kudus has been and given how much trouble he caused Arsenal in the League Cup game and caused Zinchenko actually in the League Cup game. So yeah, Tommy, I think that's a relatively simple decision. I think Havertz keeps his place 100%. I thought he was excellent, really, really bright performance from him. And I think he keeps his place up top. Providing, I don't know, actually, if Jesus is fit, Jesus comes, would you play Jesus over Havertz if Jesus is fit and has trained all week?
No. I want to reward Havertz for a really good game.
Yeah, I think I'd do that. I think I'd keep Havertz as the 9 and have Jesus on the bench.
I'm still baffled by Kai Havertz.
He was really, really good against Liverpool. I thought I just much prefer him playing in that position. I don't think I've ever come away from watching him play in that role and not thought he's played well and he's caused loads of problems. Obviously, you want his finishing to be a bit better. He should have scored. I never felt he was going to score that when he went through 1-on-1, especially with it on his right foot. But so you want that to be better if you're playing as a 9. But I just think he always plays well in that position, and he just causes so many problems. The second half, especially that last half hour, he came into his own so much against Liverpool. He caused Van Dijk and Konate all sorts of problems. And
one more thought, even while we have Tommy's face next to him. Sorry, Tommy. I watched, for a piece I was writing, I watched back all of like Havertz's goals when he was a Leverkusen player. It's so strange because he's still, I think, like that Alisson chance, could he have got it away quicker? I thought he gave Alisson time to get close to him. And there's a few other moments as well. And kind of the history of Kai Havertz in the Premier League has basically been taking one touch too many. And you see this guy from Bayer Leverkusen, and he's flicked headers, he's poachers, finishes in the box. I think it would be great if Arteta can just help unlock that. And if I'm Arteta and his coaching staff, I want to get Havertz working on these one touch in the penalty area, bang, finishes. And I think then Arsenal could have a really good option at centre forward that he's just such a fascinating enigma, because I feel like now we're talking positively. We've done this 3 or 4 times already this season. I had to feel like we're kind of violently lurching from thinking Havertz is a really useful first 11 player to like, oh God, would we bring him off the bench as the third sub or whatever? I just needs a run of games. So that's the other argument for starting him and starting him at centre forward.
Yeah. It's interesting though, we're talking about starting him as a 9 and not in the position that he was brought to the club to try and fill. But I just feel so much more comfortable when he's playing in that 9 role. I think he just I thought he was great, and he caused Liverpool all sorts of problems. And I think he was really, really integral to that win. At the weekend, I would reward him with his place. But certainly that midfield, that Jorginho decision is going to be really interesting. If he's fit, obviously he might this foot injury might keep him out. So we'll wait and see on that. But hopefully it won't. But I can see both arguments. I think you keep a winning team, you reward a player for such a fabulous performance by keeping him in the team. But I can also see, from what I've seen against Arsenal, playing against West Ham so far this season, how maybe Smith Rowe might help Arsenal unlock West Ham a little bit easier than Jorginho will. But I don't think either way, when I get to the London Stadium on Sunday and I see the team sheet, if it's Jorginho's name there or it's Smith Rowe's name there, then I don't think I'm going to be overly disappointed.
Luxury problems.
Well, it's good options to have, isn't it? And suddenly you're looking at that squad with Tomiyasu coming back now. Suddenly it's just the squad is looking a little bit stronger again, which is very, very nice to see. How do you see the game panning out at the weekend? I don't want to go to predictions wise because I'm too superstitious for that. I never do it. But do you how do you see it all bearing out?
I think it will be the sort of classic Arsenal against non-elite level opposition where they kind of control the game. And the question really is, can they snuff it out before West Ham start backing themselves on the counter? Because Paqueta, Bowen, Kudus that you mentioned, like, you want to make sure you're not giving up too many opportunities for them to break away, because they would take them. So I mean, I'm still pretty optimistic though. I think it will be a routine. Well, I think it will be a win.
Routine.
It will be a routine Arsenal game, i.e. they'll have 60% of the ball and I'll look after 40 minutes and they've had 4 shots. I think it will be that.
Yeah, it'd be nice if West Ham were wide open and really attacked Arsenal and let their fullbacks go flying down the
David Moyes.
That would be nice, but it's just not going to happen, is it? Right, let's move on to the sort of second part of the show, and we've got lots of questions and comments that have come in. So let's get moving to that. Here's one from Junesy. Would you say Johnsy? How would you pronounce that? Junesy.
Junesy.
We'll go with Junesy. Says extra time. Hi guys, can you tell us more about the Schober Realty Training Ground, aka London Colney? Is it just a change in the name, or is it actually a new training ground with upgraded equipment, facilities, etc.? Also, any idea how much they're paying us to part ways with the ground's beloved traditional name? Arabic is my mother tongue, and it still makes no sense to me.
Okay.
In terms of right now, it's just the same training ground. It's absolutely the same training ground. But I was down there last week after the announcement for Mikel's press conference. We were talking to people at Arsenal about it, and that says basically everything's sort of on the table for where they go from here with this investment and with their expertise that Schober are going to bring. I mean, you look at, there's a lot of space there. The options for potentially building a hotel or places to stay. I think Tottenham have got the lodge, haven't they? There,
Yeah.
That was something that was discussed last week when we were there, and it certainly wasn't an idea that was batted away. They could potentially have a place where they could all stay rather than having to go to a team hotel before the game. They could, that sort of thing could happen. So I think everything's sort of on the table now in terms of where this partnership goes and how the training ground will transform. But I think one thing is for sure is that it will transform over the next few years because of this partnership. So it'll be interesting to see in terms of how much they're paying. Arsenal are very reluctant to put a figure on it when I've asked that question, but I would say that £10 million a year is certainly a figure that when I've put it to someone, I didn't get told straight away, no, that's wrong. So
yes,
that's the figure I have in my head
that
as being in and around what Arsenal are getting from this partnership.
Yeah, and I'd heard the same money wise. I haven't been down there, and I may not go for a while. Just the nature of to be honest, nature of Champions League weeks that I get. I have to take a day off, and it's quite often the day of Mikel Arteta's presser.
Yeah, I'm not there tomorrow, unfortunately. I've got really boring household stuff that I've got to do, which I told you about off air, which the viewers will not keep them entertained. They'll probably all switch off, so I'm not going to bore them with it, but very boring.
Well, inside your water softener, extra time would be a podcast I would listen to.
Yeah, there you go. Inside my water. There's lots of problems inside my water softener at the moment. So yeah, that would be a conversation that would go on too long. So yeah, I won't be at the Schober Realty training ground tomorrow. Here's one from McCormack AFC. He says, "Hi Charles and James. Earlier in the season, James went to watch Bayer Leverkusen and said Arsenal should sign Frimpong. I still think this should be the case as he offers something different to our defence, and in those tight games when he's high and wide, it allows Saka to move inside to affect the game more." So here's a fan of your idea of Arsenal signing Frimpong. Are you still very much of the opinion that should be a move that Arsenal look to try and get done this summer?
I do really like it as an idea. I think I have other things that would be sort of top of my list. I think you want a left 8 and an 8 and a striker first. What I like about Frimpong though is he would sort of double up as a winger for some games. I think he's that good as a winger. But you could also sort of, for the games you're expecting to dominate, he could come in place of Ben White. I mean, the challenge is though that Arsenal are going to have Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Timber, White. Tommy, we know, is going to sign a new contract. It's not screaming like big vacancy at right back. Please come on down.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to be buying him as a winger. And of late, I'm falling ever harder for Pedro Neto.
I am.
But I mean, Frimpong would be on the list, and I know he's got a competitive release clause at around the 40 million level. I'd also be well up for Xabi Alonso taking him to Liverpool, and Liverpool then selling Trent Alexander-Arnold to Arsenal.
Yeah,
why not?
I am. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I just don't. I look at where Arsenal are going to need to spend money and where I expect them to spend money. I just don't really see right back as a.
You're buying him as a winger,
and like you said, as we talked about Havertz, it's really interesting because are Arsenal going to have to sign a left 8, or are they going to, long term, are they still thinking from what they've seen so far this season that's what we're going to look for Kai Havertz, that is to fill that role. So it'd be interesting to see if Arsenal do have to put some money towards that position as well. But I think certainly striker is absolutely, that's going to eat into Arsenal's transfer fund this summer, and then potentially an even deeper line midfielder.
Can I throw you my new obsession, my new deal? I know that Sam Dean at the Telegraph was the first, and he did this on one of the many rival podcasts that are out there. He pitched Frankie de Jong.
Oh yes, he
Barcelona. Which I love as an idea, because you sort of see now that Barcelona may feel compelled to sell him. In such circumstances, you can actually get a good midfielder at an incredible deal. Frankie de Jong is my new white whale. Get me Frankie de Jong in an Arsenal shirt.
Is your new white whale? What the hell does
that mean? White whale? Well, it's from Moby Dick. It's the sort of thing that obsesses you. I mean, I have other obsessions in life. I'm very into The Last Dinner Party at the moment. But in purely football terms, a lot of my energy is sort of going to how can I facilitate Frankie de Jong coming to the Premier League? And I'm not actually going to try and do that, and obviously I can't. But I'm very pro Frankie de Jong coming to the Premier League.
Still laughing at the Moby Dick reference. That is far too niche for me to understand that. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say no to Frankie de Jong. Frankie, is it Frankie or Frankie? It's Frankie, isn't it? Frankie de Jong. Yeah, I wouldn't say no to that, obviously, but very, very good player. Yeah, Pedro Neto, by the way, I am 100% with every week that passes and I watch him, I am more and more like just throw money at walls for that player. I think he's such a fantastic signing and is exactly what Arsenal need as well. Extra time. Since we have seen Havertz play up top in our 3 hardest fixtures so far this season, City in the Community Shield, City at home in the Premier League and Liverpool at home, do you guys think that Havertz is now becoming the desired option for striker position in the biggest games? As I'm reading this, I'm realised we've just already basically answered this before we got to this question.
A little.
I know that Jesus has been either out or played at right wing in those games, but since we have a very good record now in these games with Havertz as our number 9, he might start ahead of Jesus in this position in the biggest game. Say we reach Champions League final and everyone's fit. Do you guys reckon Arteta would start with Havertz up top?
See, that's the fun bit I thought we could answer.
I still think he'd start with Jesus up top. If Jesus is fit and Arsenal are in the Champions League final, I think he plays Jesus. Unless something happens between now and then, unless Havertz suddenly scores 10 goals in playing up there or Jesus really struggles. I think right now, if the Champions League finals this weekend and everyone's fit, I think Jesus plays for Arsenal.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the only thing again would be like the other angle would be, is there a matchup thing? I'm trying to think of like a team like Real Madrid that basically are playing whoever they can find at centre back, and a lot of those guys aren't that tall and good in the air. Like, you can sort of convince me on a matchup perspective. And I think the thing I would say now is, if and when Arsenal reach the Champions League final, I wouldn't panic about Kai Havertz starting up front. I believe he's done that before in a Champions League final and did quite well. Didn't do
too bad. I wouldn't have any problem with it. Like I said, right now, if for this game on Sunday, I would be quite happy, even if Jesus is fit. I think Havertz deserves to keep his place up top because of his performance at the weekend. And yeah, I like him in that position. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Real Nostradamus says, extra time. How could we not sell or release Suarez in the window? He must be the highest paid fit player in the league that has the least amount of minutes. 65 minutes and 0 league. Has he got 0 league minutes this season? Really, he's not played a single minute. 17 million has been spent on him with a ludicrous 75 grand a week wages. He's not behind the scenes. He's not a behind the scenes guy like El Neni-esque figure. Question: who would you like to bring in this summer as another experienced player who may not get as many minutes but possibly be very helpful on the pitch? I thought that was interesting. I don't know if Arsenal need another inexperienced player come the summer. I don't think you need to sign someone just because they're experienced. I think this squad, even though he's young, it's getting more and more experienced. I think Jorginho, as I said, should stick around so he could provide that. I think Jesus and Zinchenko, they're not going to go anywhere and they're still very experienced and have been there, done it. Trossard's experienced. A lot of these younger players now are getting experienced. Declan Rice is a leader. Gabriel's a leader. So I don't really think Arsenal need to buy someone purely based on experience this summer. I don't know if you agree with that. And in terms of Cedric, that they were open for him to go. Cedric, as far as I've been told, was absolutely keen on going as well. There were discussions with Galatasaray. They didn't lead to anything. They ended up signing inside Serge Aurier. And so I suppose it came down to the question of, is it worth cancelling his contract for these 5 or 6 months, or is it just worth keeping him around? And I guess they just felt, Arsenal, we know, like to cancel contracts. They're not scared of doing it, but they obviously felt in this occasion that it probably wasn't worth what they were going to have to end up stumping up, and he was worthwhile keeping around. So simple as that.
Because the one thing I would take issue with is actually behind the scenes, people do speak really positively of Cedric in terms of, just the work ethic. I know that when I say this, it will be sort of like framed as this is not criticism of anyone whose contract they did cancel. Like, a lot of those players were on a lot more money and were higher profile and had expectations for a role, deserved expectations for a role that Cedric doesn't have. Cedric does that job right. I mean, like, I agree. When you put those numbers out there, it is a colossal waste of money. And I thought that at the time, and I've thought it all the way through. But it's a colossal waste of money in that you spent £17 million for a guy that's a good trainer. he is a good trainer though. So I think like the view would be like, well,
And he
what's
is
the point
popular.
of?
He
Yeah,
is popular.
exactly.
Just like Elneny's popular, he is very popular, and he does. He coaches the younger players as well. So he is a behind the scenes person. There's no, you can't. I don't think you can say he's not. I think he definitely is. Whether that's worth keeping him around for, everyone else has got a different opinion on that, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, and in terms of experience, do you think Arsenal need to sign anyone just purely for experience this summer? Would that be top of your
I can't think
agenda?
of anyone better than Jorginho. I mean, like when you ever see him like doing his warm ups down the sideline, he's like he's basically coaching the team.
He is. He does absolutely
I love
100%.
that bit of him.
Right, here's one from just a no name. It says extra time with the potential midfield spots being available in the summer and the resurgence of Sambi Lokonga at Luton. Is there a way back for Sambi next year, or will Arsenal just cash in? Thanks.
Cash in. This is great. Like at the start of the season, you're like, oh my god, Sambi can't get a game for Luton. Arsenal might never see a penny from this. I don't think. I mean, his book value now must be about 8.5 million. He signed a 4-year contract when he joined, or 5?
5 probably.
5 years. Oh, it was
top of my
3
head,
years ago as well, wasn't it? So his book value now would be about 6 million. Like Arsenal can make a profit on him. That's great news. Thanks for your service, Sambi. It was a good gamble. I think there's a different timeline where it worked out quite well at Arsenal. He started really encouragingly, but it just weren't the minutes for him to develop there. So yeah, cash out. Hopefully to Luton, but I think he's actually played so well that another Premier League team.
I was going to ask that. You think if Luton go down, and that's a big if at the moment because they're looking very, very good. But if they were to go down, do you think another Premier League club would come knocking for him? He certainly put himself in the window. It seems like he's put himself in the window. Anyway,
probably. I wouldn't want to sort of.
What do you reckon is realistic money?
8 to 10.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think we're going to be sort of like he's going to be funding. You're going to go. Oh, we can buy Victor Osimhen now. But I think 8 to 10 would be fair.
So that's taking an 8 million hit on him. About 8 million hit, isn't it?
Well, but I mean, obviously, it's the old FFP or PSR, all that stuff. You can write. That's a profit. Whether you've got £5 million or £7 million worth of performance from him in the preceding years is debatable, but
yeah,
it's all good. It's all
bit
of nice.
That's fair play to him. It's good to see him doing well. And when you said he couldn't get in the Luton team, I think that's a bit unfair. He could. He just got injured, didn't he? He started in the team and seemed to be doing pretty well. Then got injured. Now he's worked his way back in and got picked up a couple of assists for it was a lovely assist for his goal. For the goal, someone scored. It was Brighton, wasn't it? It was a lovely assist by Sambi for that. So yeah, fair play to him. Good to see him doing well. Rizwan says, considering we're already out of the league and FA Cups this season, what would you consider to be a success at the end of the season? It's still early, and I know we're in good position to challenge for both the league and the Champions League, but realistically, City are looking back to their dangerous self, and this is still our first year back in the Champions League. If we don't win either, which I hope we would, but again, being realistic, that odds that are against us, what would you consider a success this season, or would you put a bit of a dampener on the progress we've seen going into summer with nothing to show for our efforts? You can go first on that.
Yeah, I thought you might say that. It's interesting because quite often we've done this sort of question before, but it's quite often like, what's the minimum bar? And if Arteta doesn't do X, should he be in trouble? Successful is like, I feel like for Arsenal to consider this season a success, I think they need to establish themselves as a top 5 team in Europe and the second best team in England. Even if they don't win, I think if they go through the Champions League, I think for success, I would say a Champions League semi-final, knocking out a big club, and then making a great account of yourselves against maybe a rich team, and then pushing till the end in the Premier League in the title race. It would be a sort of hollow sort of success, wouldn't it? Because ultimately success is winning trophies.
Yeah.
And it can only go on for so long that you just go like, it's progress, and progress is success. Like, you're going to need something to mark it. But I do understand that what Arsenal have against them is just the best team in the world, and the best team I can remember since. Well, I'm not going to. We could spend ages doing that bit, but it's hard. But Arsenal need to keep proving that they are at the very top of the next run down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really, really hard to define it. I don't see if Arsenal finish second this season, I don't necessarily say that's a success, but I certainly don't say that's a failure. I think that's just where they are. That's the second or third is kind of where Arsenal are at the moment. Last season they were fantastic, but Liverpool had one of those weird seasons where they kind of fell off a cliff, didn't they? And they're obviously back to what they were beforehand. I think it's easy just to look at Liverpool's season last season and think, oh, that was it. That was the end of the era. It clearly wasn't. It was a bit of an anomaly, Alan Brazil type moment there. And they're clearly, back to their best, and they've still got quality teams. So it's very hard to look at if Arsenal finish second or even finish third just behind this Liverpool team would be a failure. It certainly wouldn't be a success. But yeah, I think like you, if Arsenal were to really, really push City, finish second, having really pushed them, but also properly gone deep into the Champions League and shown that they really do mean business against the very, very best, I think then I'd start saying, yeah, obviously they didn't get any silverware, so it's nothing to shout home about and have an open top bus parade about. But I think it's still that'd be another big building block on the unexpected season that they had last season and they enjoyed last season. It would definitely be a building block. It's just very hard. Like you said, you're up against the best team in the world, arguably the greatest club side ever in English football, who spent just as much as they won the treble last season, and they spent just as much as Arsenal did in the summer on new players and revamping the squad with the greatest manager arguably in history. I mean, that's what you're up against. So if you're measuring success purely by winning the title in England, I think that's it's a very, very hard thing to do. I really do.
And this is why you need to be allowed to celebrate beating one of the other best teams in Europe, because Arsenal and Liverpool could get a lot right. Like Liverpool spent a decade getting almost everything right, or however long Klopp was there, and they had very little to show for it. Like, you got to celebrate the successes that come, because you got a team over there with a nation state backing them.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Right, there's one last question to go. It's one from John here. It says, extra time. Hi guys, looking at our trickiest fixtures remaining, can you see any of the top four winning all of theirs? And then they list them all. I mean, I don't even need to list them all to say no. I think even Man City, I think, will not go through that entire that list of teams there.
But Forest away on Man City.
I know. I just noticed. I know it's Forest stuck on the end there. Although Forest did take points off them at the City Ground last season.
Yeah.
That day that Arsenal beat Man City, I think everyone drops points there. City always struggle at Anfield. I think.
I mean, there's one obvious one, isn't it, where City are going to drop points.
Oh,
even though they have now broken the hoodoo, I can tell you now they'll lose away to Spurs, because they always do.
That is true. Yeah. Looking at Liverpool, actually, Forest away, Man City at home, Everton away, Tottenham home, Man United. Liverpool might go through those games unbeaten. Looking at it, actually, because they always do well at Anfield against Man City. I don't really, they got Brighton at home, which they got Tottenham at home. Liverpool, out of all of those, I would say Liverpool, Arsenal obviously got some really tough fixtures there. They've got to go to Tottenham, which is going to be incredibly difficult. Got to go Man City, which is tough. Brighton away. Arsenal got some tough trips there to deal with. So, no, I don't think anyone, to be fair, is going to go through all of those, winning all of them. But I think if anyone did,
quick one for you,
maybe be Liverpool.
When can we get Aston Villa off that list? How long do you see them?
Not yet.
They're only 3 points behind.
I know.
I think they're not very good.
Not yet, but I do see that teams are beginning to. It feels like they're beginning to wise up a little bit to Aston Villa and their high line and how you break them down and just show a little bit more maturity, which I just wish Arsenal did in that game against them, because they should have picked them off and scored 3 or 4 goals against them at Villa Park. It was so frustrating. And it feels like teams are beginning to wise up to that a little bit, even if they did in the middle of the couple of home defeats go to Sheffield United and win the way they did. I thought it was quite telling that Chelsea and Newcastle have both gone there and scored 3 goals lately. And it wouldn't surprise me if Villa continue to play the way they do and set up the way they do defensively, that you might see more of that happening during the second half of the season. But we shall see on that. Anyway, James, look, mate, we're up to the 50-minute mark. I think it's time to call time on it. Thank you, everyone, for getting involved. Appreciate it, as always. I should have said this at the beginning, actually, but I don't think I did mention it. But this is actually going out on Friday. We recorded it on Thursday afternoon. It's going out Friday morning because of some stuff I've got going on. which is going to stop me doing a video in the morning. So if something massive has happened between 2 p.m. on Thursday and, I don't know, 10 a.m. on Friday when this is going to go out, and it's not been discussed on this show, it's because it's been pre-recorded on the Thursday. So a slight disclaimer there, which I should have put at the front of this show, but I've ended up putting at the back. But that's why. If
Can you believe Pep's quit?
I know. I bet you something like that will happen now. But anyway, look, mate, Top Man, what are you doing this weekend? You you said you're at West Ham, aren't you?
Yeah, we'll be at West Ham together. I'm going to keep a close eye on the Bundesliga title race as well. It's such a good weekend of football.
Excellent.
AFCON, Asia Cup final as well. Jordan against Qatar. It's a good weekend of football.
There's not been many tournaments, I think, that's had more dramatic endings in games than what we've seen at AFCON. Every single match, seemingly, in the last couple of minutes has just swung from one way to the other. Yesterday was amazing when Osimhen scored that goal.
It was incredible.
It got pulled back for the VAR penalty. That guy
Asia Cup, though. Asia Cup's been great.
The Asia Cup has been great. Yeah, I haven't seen as much of it as I have the AFCON, but it has been good. That guy who missed for South Africa in injury time from the free kick when it was spilled and he bounced out and put it over. Oh my God, he'll be thinking of that for the rest of his life every time he shuts his eyes, I imagine. But yeah, brilliant tournament. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Cool. All right, mate. It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for catching up. I'll see you for bangers and mash, I imagine, in the press room at
at
West Ham on Sunday. Take it easy, mate. Speak to you soon.
See ya. Bye bye.